Now think about that. That
Okay.
chick ain't the brightest bulb in the lamp.
No, she's not. Oh, no.
KGRA Digital Broadcasting and Pop Culture Minefield presents Dangerous Military Nerds. Dangerous Military Nerds. They're just like regular nerds, only dangerous. And now, your hosts, Don Ecker and Gary Cassell.
And happy birthday, America, 247 years old. And Gary, to celebrate that, I watched two movies appropriate for this holiday. I watched Gettysburg, which I try to watch that at least once every year around the 4th. And I watched Rough Riders, that movie TNT put out a number of years ago, with Tom Berenger playing Teddy Roosevelt and a whole slew, including Dale Dye and Lee Ermey, had prominent parts in that film. I loved it.
By the way, all our good wishes and best wishes out to my boss, Dale Dye. I had invited him to join Tom and me this weekend to talk about Mission Impossible because he's in it. He plays Frank Barnes in that movie. And but sadly, Dale is sick as fuck. He has the flu. It's kicking his ass this week. And
Oh,
so
no.
I talked to Julia today. So everybody wish Dale to feel better because
Prayers
boy,
for
Is
Mr.
it the
Dye.
flu?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's the flu. You know, it's like, it's so funny. I still laugh about it. When last year for New Year's, I got the flu. And everybody's like, oh my God, it's the coof. Is it the coof? And I went, no, it's just the flu. And then I paused to think, you know, a lot of people die from the flu.
A lot of people die from the
it's just
flu
the flu.
annually, yes. And the older
I'm a
you get,
medic,
the
I
more
should know
susceptible
better.
you are. Yeah. Come on. It's just the flu.
Just
No
the
big
flu.
deal.
It's just a deadly
hey,
thing that kills a lot
look,
of adults.
guys, let me tell you a little secret. Me, I've been here before. I died. I came back. If you do die, you'll be back. So don't sweat the small shit.
So you're up there with Patton on the
I am.
reincarnation.
You bet.
That's
You bet.
interesting.
I
When
think
did you
that's
start thinking that?
entirely too much energy to waste with only one trip around the wheel. Got to be more than that, pal. Got to be more than that.
When did you start believing that?
Oh, when I was about 8 or 9, believe it or not.
You know, the answer to that was, about 5 lives ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
well, that was this time. Now, when I was a tiny little tyke, tiny, okay, according to my parents, I had, in their words, my imaginary friend. And we would hold long conversations. And this is something else that's very funny. When I was a tiny tyke, I knew I could fly. I could fly. Now, you can make a hell of a lot out of that, but I never did jump off the roof. But
Thank God.
I knew I could fly.
Maybe you were a
I've
bird in a
given-
past life.
I've given a lot
Maybe.
of thought to it myself, and I've always believed that no matter what I was was nobody famous, but I believed I was a warrior in every life.
Yeah.
Because I think you recycle that way. I don't think you.
Ask my wife what she says about that.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Well, what
Well,
has
most-
she said? Because she's not here, and I can ask you.
Well, she is firmly convinced that I had been a soldier in many lifetimes.
That's interesting.
Well, you know, a lot of people that believe in reincarnation think that you keep getting recycled until you get it right.
Exactly.
I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I like the movie This Is Your Life. or Defending Your Life, whatever that movie was with Albert Brooks.
Oh, the Albert Brooks movie. Yeah, it's
Because
awesome.
he was a coward.
Yes, it's hilarious. That movie's great.
A loser coward.
Mm-hmm.
He finally gets it
Rip
right.
Torn's awesome as his lawyer too.
Oh my God, Rip Torn. that is a generational actor right there. My grandfather loved him. My father loved Rip Torn. And I was a huge fan. All three of us, 3 generations.
Yeah, 3 generations, right? It's kind of like I always tell people about Chris Sarandon. You know, Chris Sarandon's got fans from several generations. I mean, I first saw him in Dog Day Afternoon when he won his first Academy Award for his first damn movie. You know, a lot of people remember him as Jerry Dandridge in Fright Night. And my daughter loves him because
of in Child's Play.
Yeah. And he's also the voice of Jack in Nightmare Before Christmas. So he's got fans from several generations, you know?
I don't know what that means, Don Bush said. I killed 2 birds with 1 stone, Don. My wife is my imaginary friend.
All you got to do, Gary, is just think about what the man said. His imaginary friend. Well, if it's his imaginary friend, she ain't his real friend. So there you go.
Real friend. There you go. Everybody that is here right now is, of course, Dust Wolfen, Boosh McFadden, Anima Confused, the love of my life. Zax is here. Oh man, Zax is here. Do I have the video here? Do I have it? Do I have it here? Please tell me I have it here. Please tell me I put it on here.
I think we.
Oh, there it is. It's there. There you go. Let's see. Penny, of course, is here. Our Muslim uncle. Assalamu alaikum. It's good to see you. And E. Clay Thomason is here. So, and of course, we have our audience at KGRA. And Chanel is in the background, just shaking her head at everything we say.
Yay, Chanel! Yay!
Chanel's the bomb diggity yo. She really is. Boy, I tell you.
Oh, shots fired.
By the way, she's wanting to know who started the show, and I did. I started the show because you were talking, and I'm like, we're out of time. No one had said, fuck it, I'm going to start the show while you were talking. You were shitting on Cher. And I'm like,
Sax deserves an answer.
Zax says, I'm not the love of your life. Is he talking to me or you?
To you.
To me, I love you,
Hey,
buddy.
it could be me. It's possible.
It could be Joe or the inflatable doll that he keeps in the closet.
The what?
No way. No way. Leave my doll out of it, man.
But no, everybody knows it's Anima. Come on. Who else is here? Did I just see somebody? No, it's just our crowd. All right. Penny is here, by the way, and she says hi to all of us. We say hi back. She didn't say hi.
Hi, Penny.
She didn't say
Hey,
hi to Martin,
Penny.
though. Martin was excluded from her thing.
No,
here.
she talked to me before.
No, it's not there. I'm looking right now. There it is.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
here.
No, it's not.
She
It's
wrote
not
to
there,
me
though.
before she wrote to you.
Yeah, but it's not there. That's where it's important. You're not included.
Okay,
So-
I took a lot of crap from my Korean
The Korean service.
yeah. What's that guy's name?
Monkey Jeebus. Monkey
No,
Jeebus?
not Jeebus.
Oh, Matt Martigan.
Mad Man Mardigan. Yeah, I took a lot of crap from him, but now what the hell was I gonna say?
Oh shit!
Welcome to my life.
I want you to tell me you're old without saying you're old. Now, why did I go in the kitchen?
Hey, man, I do that one all the time.
I do too.
Yeah. Well, if it comes back to me, I'll bring it up. But okay. So we were talking about at the beginning, well, right before the show started, about Cher. Cher, 4 days after her divorce was final from Sonny Bono, turns around and marries Greg Allman. Okay. 10 days later, she leaves him and divorces him because he had drug and alcohol abuse problems.
She
Now,
didn't know
think
that
about
before she married him.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Now, how can you be that dumb. I'm just curious. Anybody have any ideas?
Maybe she's blonde underneath that raven hair. Maybe. I don't know.
Oh,
Shots fired.
Yeah, me and Rhonda
And
are
by
always
the way,
talking
you
about.
brought up watching the Rough Riders. Do you remember who Dale Dye played?
Yeah, he played Leonard, the commander
Leonard
of, I guess, the entire regiment, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Colonel Leonard Wood,
Leonard Wood, yes.
the man for whom a base was named after, Fort Leonard Wood,
Right.
Yep.
where many of us go to basic. I went to basic there.
I went to Dick's.
You know, they finally changed the name of my the fort where my dad was serving when I was born. It's
would they
now
change
Fort
it?
Johnson.
What?
Yeah, it sounds funny as hell, doesn't it? Yeah. Apparently, Leonidas Polk was an officer in the Confederate Army, so they changed
Fort Polk changed its name?
Yes, it's Fort Johnson now, down in Leesville. Yep.
Yeah, Fort
That
Polk was
is
Confederate.
so bullshit.
It is, buddy.
We
It is. It's dumb.
integrated them back into the U.S., back into the U.S. military. And so they should be treated with honor, and they're not.
These
No,
woke
they're not.
Because these
motherfuckers.
fucking people don't know their fucking history.
I mean, it'll always be Fort Polk to me, but thank God it
And what
says
do they say
Leesville
about
on my
history?
birth certificate. You know.
What do they say about history? If you don't fucking remember it, you're
You're
gonna
doomed to repeat it.
fucking
Yeah.
repeat it.
Yep.
Mhm.
By the way, I once made a joke to my dad back before I went in the Army about it was a mixture of Fort Leonard Wood and Fort Polk. And I said, I want to go to Fort Polk in the woods.
oh my. Ah.
Crazy.
I think I was 15 when I made the joke.
Yeah, that sounds like a 15-year-old joke right there.
Did he smack you into a
No, he chuckled. He thought it was funny. My dad actually liked my humor.
Yeah.
He'd get mad at me sometimes because sometimes my humor is directed at him, but he got a kick out of my jokes. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to admit that's clever for 15.
For 15, that's good. Yep, no doubt.
So, hey, don't you tell Bush what channel Brian is on. We're doing a show right now, for Christ's sake. You don't get to go anywhere.
Is she directing people to that 70s rock fans show?
I went to office to talk to him and say hi, and they tried to get me on the show, and it's like because everybody loves anima. Well, I love anima, but it is true.
You will have to pull a bill in this case. Anima, I'm doing a show.
Right? Come on. Don't be leeching my people off that 70s rock fans.
Fuck you, Brian. No.
Right now.
I love Brian.
It's a big YouTube. There's room for
What were they
everybody.
doing the show about anyway? I forget. What are they doing today? Brian is live with Christian. I'm assuming Christian Delorme.
Yeah,
And
probably is. It was an impromptu thing. I saw him send out a thing on his thread for his your regular Monday show. It's only talk and roll. Yeah, that thread.
Now, by the
He said
way,
it's
I
impromptu.
noticed in our, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, Martin, that if you go into edit your avatar, there's a Chuck Dixon image in there.
Yes.
Is Chuck Dixon on KGRA?
No, but you brought him once to DMN.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
I've seen him on your channel. Yeah.
And I've been waiting for more since then.
Yeah, I keep asking, but he's busy. And
he just went to work for Ripa.
yeah.
Yep.
You know, so yeah.
Man's got to work.
Yes, sir. That should tell you right there. Those of you that want to knock Ripa for what he's doing.
I'm
Chuck
going
Dixon
to stop doing the show right now. Just stop, Joe. Just stop. And we're just going to go watch Brian's show on Rumble. Shut up, Anima. Promote his show.
Oh my God.
3 guesses what I'm drinking today.
Is it whiskey? God, I hope it's whiskey.
No.
Fuel up.
Tea. I am drinking tea.
What? You still be drinking
Tea.
coffee and pour the tea on the.
Never drank tea in my life.
I'm drinking heavily caffeinated fruit drink.
Really, Joe? I do.
Nah, never.
Vitamin
I'm a coffee guy.
I get you, man. Tea It's 99% of the teas that I tasted in my life are horrible.
Yeah.
Best tea, in my opinion, I do like tea. Best tea is, I like the English morning tea, but Earl Grey is the shit.
Yeah.
I love Earl Grey.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
No milk.
hate it.
No sweetness, just drinking
Nope.
that tea.
Mhm.
It's strong. I like that.
Did you try it before or after you watched Next Generation?
Way before. I was in England.
Okay.
I was 13 when I had Earl Grey the first time, and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Isn't that
Well, we
Picard's
threw-
And what I
tea
liked
of
was
choice, right?
when Next Generation came out that he drank Earl Grey. I'm like, I drink Earl Grey.
We threw
You
the
were
tea
geeking
in the
out,
harbor.
right?
Because
I
it's just
Finished
like
tea in the
me.
harbor.
Fished the
That's
box
right.
out, and I'm reusing it. I believe in resurfacing here.
Yeah,
So there you
resurfacing,
go.
recycling. Yeah. Yes, we did. And that's what today's show is about, is the birth of a nation, but not the racist movie. Even though it is a good film, D.W. Griffith was a very good filmmaker, but it's horribly racist. But Birth of the
Birth of a
Actual
Nation.
Yeah, the movie, the original.
Woodrow Wilson screened that in the White House.
Yes,
he
did, because
was
he was a
a
flaming
piece of racist
Democrat?
shit.
racist. He was a Dixiecrat. And he absolutely screened that movie in the White House. Big old racist. He's the one who resegregated the military because it had already been desegregated.
Wow.
And then he
And-
got us involved in World War I, and we were far, 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 far from being ready. We only had a few 100,000 in the entire U.S. military establishment before we got involved. Suddenly, we quickly swelled to over 1 million, well over 1 million men, and we didn't have any guns to give them.
Well,
We
it was
didn't
so
have any
messed up.
airplanes. We didn't
My-
have any machine guns. We didn't have any armor at all. Nothing. We
My
had
grandfather
broomsticks.
was in the first group that went over, and they didn't even know what to do with them when they got there. You know what he was? My grandfather was a cannoneer, and they had no artillery.
Kind of rough to do your job without that.
So he ended up in a bastard brigade, and he was a machine gunner. This guy was a fucking cannoneer, and he's mounting a Hotchkiss machine gun. It's ridiculous how we went to war. But I'll tell you what, we went to war, and that shit ended pretty quickly, didn't it?
And guess what? The French gave us their junk. That show automatic rifle, what a piece. You could not take two of those weapons, break them down, change the parts, put them back together, and expect it to work. That's how shoddy that French crap was.
That's right. But also, they gave us STDs. They taught us French gutter sex. And we were introduced to prepackaged cigarettes.
What a fun time.
Americans rolled their own cigarettes until
Yeah.
World War One.
Mhm.
And then it's like, oh, you can buy these things already made? Awesome. What do I call them? Smoky treats. You know what I mean? Because a lot of my friends smoke. It's like, oh man, I gotta smoke. I'm like, time to go have a smoky treat.
When did they stop putting cigarettes in the rations?
I
They
think
used
it
to
was
put 'em in there.
after the Korean War because it was in a lot of the K rats and C rats.
Oh, shit. It was all through Vietnam. Every
Was it in
C-rat
Vietnam?
had. Hell
They did.
yes.
Anywhere where
Hell
they had the
yes.
C rats and the K rats, you would find cigarettes. I know that.
Get a little
And-
pack of 4 each meal.
Lucky Strikes, and what was the other one? Chesterfield.
Chesterfields.
Yeah, Chesterfields and Lucky Strikes.
Mm-hmm.
They had a contract with the DoD. And yes, Zach, the Spanish flu. My grandfather told me when he was little that they were stuck on the ship for like weeks because
You know where the Spanish flu began?
it was not Spain.
No, it was right here in the United States. The first recordings of the Spanish flu was right freaking here.
And you know what? That's a good question. When did they start putting filters on cigarettes? I don't remember. I'm sure my dad told me it sometime.
You've had the option ever since I've been alive. I know that.
Oh.
Yeah.
The big thing with my dad is he smoked filterless Camels. That was his thing. But then in the 70s, they got these things called aqua filters. So my dad started buying the aqua filters.
Right.
And I kept saying to him, I said, why don't you just get filtered cigarettes? It's different. I'm like,
Okay.
whatever.
Right. Yeah, the real men smoke unfiltered Camels and Pall Malls, right? Oof.
Yes.
Nope.
That's some rough stuff.
Lucky Strikes.
Yeah, Lucky
Yeah,
Strikes.
Lucky
I
Strikes,
started
too.
Lucky
Yeah.
Strikes.
Yeah.
I remember there was a bloopers album that came out when I was a kid, late 60s, early 70s, that had the recording of a bunch of the artists that were recording a commercial for Chesterfield cigarettes. And It was really funny. And they had the music and everything. And then they decided to mess around and record a mock version of the commercial. And it went just like this. It's like, Chesterfield, go to Fire Island and you'll survey the biggest hits in the world today. They wear tight pants.
Even
They
John.
wear tight pants. And they get big pleasure wearing when they can with Chesterfield.
Unbelievable
well,
that they had
Das Wolfen-
advertisements for that stuff.
I bought that as a kid.
Das Wolfen finally speaks up. I mean, holy shit. He's here.
Yeah, he
Hey,
should join us.
Das Wolfen's here, Gary.
I know. Send him an invite, dude. I was so excited with him. We had a really good talk, and I said, "You have something to say. Start interjecting," and he did. He was talking on the show this morning. He says, "It's hard to get a word in edgewise with Joe, Don, and Gary." I'm like, "Do it, do it! I dare you!" And he did. He fucking did it. And I was really pleased with him this morning. I even wrote to him. I'm like, "I'm proud of you, man. You spoke up and said some cool shit today."
Yeah, he talks on my show all the time. But
Was he in the Girl Scouts?
Joe was.
No,
No.
Das Wolfen.
I think I went as far as Weeblos. That's
You know,
as
I
far
have
as
nothing to
went.
say. You know, I was a Girl Scout with my daughter.
Yeah, there you go. I was
She
fixing to
member of
say.
the Girl Scouts as her assistant troop leader.
My daughters didn't do scouts, man. They did dance line. That's what they did.
Okay, dance line to me means something else. What does that mean?
Dance line?
Yeah, dance
Oh
line
man,
is
it's
like a chorus line.
it's like the Rockettes, that kind of thing. It's a dance troupe.
Oh, all right. I'll go check it out. Let's see. What did he say?
Put a screenshot in the group chat of the filter question.
Let's see. Messages.
But yeah, they've had the option for filters as long as I've been alive. So that's since '65. So
Oh, not
Now,
that group.
in Vietnam, occasionally we get beer sent up. Now, of course, back in those days, the most desirable beer was, believe it or not, Budweiser. But by the time it got up north where I was, all the Budweiser was sucked up by the Remps back in the rear with the gear. And we got
Renf,
Carling
for those
Black
of you that
Label.
don't know, is a rear echelon motherfucker. Keep going, Don. I just wanted to remind the non-coms what that meant.
We got the Carling Black Label beer. That's what we got. And usually, believe it or not, the cans were rusty. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got the best of the best, boy.
there he is.
Yeah.
What's up, John?
Now, when I was growing up with my dad, the big beers were Coors, Budweiser, and Schlitz and PBR. That was all those guys drank. I never saw another beer.
All I know is that Smoking the Bandit was the best advertisement Coors ever got. No doubt.
Well, Coors, when I was growing up in Virginia, they didn't have Coors because they couldn't go that part of the country.
They couldn't go east.
They didn't
Yeah,
have refrigerated trucks then. When they started getting refrigerated trucks, first thing they did is they shipped Coors to the East Coast.
Yep.
And you never saw anybody happier than my dad. And then finally, when I was old enough to drink, when Dad says, "You get yourself a Coors," I said, "I'd rather have Guinness. This stuff's piss water."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My dad shot me a dirty look, and I'm like, it is. It's piss water to me.
I'm not a fan of many beers, but we made these really nice glasses when I was at Libby. It was a tall tumbler, and it had the mountain grooved into it, the Coors Mountain. It was really cool looking, really nice glass. Yeah.
All I'll say, boys, is PBR. That's it. In a
Past
Blue
Blue
Ribbon.
Ribbon, yeah. Christian DeLorme swears by it, dude. That guy, that's mother's milk to him.
Yeah, when somebody would say something surprising when I was in the military, that was my response. I said, paint me red, white, and blue and sell me as a 6-pack of PBR. Like, what the fuck did you just say?
When he wished me a happy 4th of July in a message the other day, he said, thanks, enjoy Independence Day, and thanks for the American beer. Yep. So.
Okay, so let's see. Plastic filters were invented in the 1950s in response to lung cancer fears. Filters were initially used from 1860. That's the stem ones that they would make, yeah. But when did they start using the fiber ones? Was that the one you're talking about, the plastic filters? Kent, an American brand of cigarettes, was introduced to the market by Lorillard Tobacco Company in 1952, and they were hailed as the first filtered cigarette. But I'm curious, when did it's like, when did they start using the filter we commonly see today, which is that fiber, microfiber filters?
I don't know. But
So-
you telling me that they started doing it in the 50s makes me go, and they continued to advertise it, even though they had cancer fears. That's
9 out of 10
smoked
doctors.
9 out of 10 doctors approve. Yeah.
My last cigarette I smoked on October 31st, Halloween, 1996. That's the day I quit. And let me tell you what, I didn't know if I could do it, but by God, I did.
Did you
It was
use
a rough
anything?
one.
Because I quit
Yeah.
cold turkey. I
used the patch.
Did you?
Yeah.
I just look. You know what got me to quit? I was at Libby Glass, and they were going to charge us. We got paid weekly now, fellas. They were going to charge us $20 more a paycheck for health insurance if we were smokers, and they saliva tested us to make sure we weren't smoking to keep from paying that. And I said, you know what? This stuff's getting too expensive anyway. Hell with it. And I just put them down.
Yeah, my
Never
daughter
touched
was
it again.
pissing and moaning about money, and I said, you cut that smoking out, baby, and you're going to find yourself a lot richer.
Dude, yeah.
I remember messing with my dad one day, and I was 18, and he says, sometimes, man, I still get that craving. I said, for what? Cigarette? He goes, yeah. I said, well, you don't have to get rid of that, right? He said, what? Fix that oral fixation, suck a dick. It'll stop it. He threw something at me. I don't remember what he threw.
People always ask me, do you feel better? I'm like, hell no, I want a cigarette. What are you talking about?
Well,
I never picked up that habit. My parents both smoked, and my grandpa smoked filterless Camels.
My daughter doesn't smoke because she hated me and her mother smoking. Yeah.
I quit it. I quit it 13 years ago. Cold turkey, and of course, you will always want a cigarette. Always.
I never had,
but I feel better. And is there when people ask me, hey, how did I use? I just say I use fear. I just remember how I feel after a cigarette, and I say no.
Now, I will admit to occasionally, and it's been well over a year, but I do occasionally decide to have a cigar. I don't inhale it.
That's
but
I was fixing to say. That's not.
I French inhale cigars.
Hey, Kitty Bear is here.
Oh, hey, Kitty Bear. Now, see, I never wanted a cigarette. I think they're gross. And but I would, if I'm with friends out at a bar and they start smoking, I will smoke. Just simply because it doesn't seem to irritate my eyes as much. It's less frustrating. But I eventually just went to cigars. And I found this interesting. If you want to get your friends that smoke cigarettes to stop smoking when you're out drinking, smoke cigars around them. And I tell them,
Yeah.
I'll stop when you stop.
It's a different animal. Yep. Mhm.
And they will stop because they're like, God damn, dude, cigars, that's fucking,
Well,
shit
it's
burns."
3 times as much smoke, right? And they can't stand it. Yeah.
It's really strong. But what we used to, would do, you would puff it into your mouth and then push it out and then inhale through your nose. And we'd French smoke cigars. But you really shouldn't, because it's
No.
just
Just for
God.
taste.
Well-
you're not supposed to inhale it. Yep.
I'll tell you the one time in my life, well, it happened on a number of occasions, that I really appreciated a smoke was after going through a fucking mortar attack.
Mm.
We were getting bounced by the NVA occasionally. They'd bring the mortars in, the 61 millimeters and whatever the hell else they were using, 82s, and they would pound us a little bit, see if they could catch us off guard. And after it was over, boy, I loved that lucky strike.
Mm. Yeah, there's something I got to tell you. It's pretty wild about. It's like I know that in the past I have been so stressed out, and I know it's supposed to physically do the opposite to you. And what I think is happening is the same way that with Ritalin, you give a kid speed and he slows down. I think it's the same impact that cigarettes have. It's like when I got really stressed and I was with friends in the military, I would puff on cigarettes with them and I would
Right.
calm the fuck down, even though I know physically that's not what it's doing.
I didn't smoke until I joined the military. I was
always
nervous
calm.
about a friggin' law test, and my buddy Brian Singh, I'll never forget him. He handed me a Salem Light. He said, "Smoke this, you'll chill out." And I
And that
smoked
was
for 32
PCP.
years after that.
Was that PCP?
No,
I was
Tasted
around.
like
I was running around base like I was a monkey, naked, throwing my shit at people. But I found the video, and I think I want to share it here. I don't think we'll get called on it. This is actually one of my favorite videos with Arnold in it, where he's explaining how he serves cigars at his house. And let me see if I can find it here. Arnold Schwarzenegger. There we go. Audio. Boom. And somebody want to add that to the screen, Martin? Martin?
Yep.
Okay. I didn't hear anything, so. And I used to get that magazine, Cigar Aficionado, because I love cigars. Brandy dipped.
When I was doing Total Recall in Mexico City in 1989, I went to a 5-star restaurant and I ordered a cigar. Then I took the cigar from the humidor and the guy took it out of my hand and he says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Before you go and smoke this cigar, let me do a little bit of spicing it up. And I said, what do you mean spicing it up? So that's what he did. He took the cedar from the humidor, poured it off, and then he went and poured some tequila.
Is it freezing
Did
up?
you see that? Did you see that he has the Conan helmet behind him?
I put it down and took this cedar and inside the tequila and started stroking the cigar. Oh, and he was like all over the place, going all the way down and making it nice and moist, the cigar. And then what he did was he rolled it. He rolled it. Then he went to me like this. You can't have it yet. He lit it. He went through this whole song and dance. And I just love watching everything. Now, when he was like lit, he was putting it into my mouth and he kept trying it. Then he grabbed it out of my mouth again. I said to myself, this guy's an idiot. What is the matter with him? And now he took it and he put it into the tequila. Then I looked at it and I said to myself, You went back and put it in my mouth. Oh, just like that. And I went, oh my God, this cigar.
Tastes fantastic.
I said, what is that? This is a Monte Cristo. What is this? He says, it doesn't matter. He says, after what I have done, it doesn't matter what cigar it is. It's Cuban or Dominican Republic or where it is made. It makes no difference. He says, because now it's a tequila cigar. In this case, of course, a Lobo cigar. I just learned something in 1989. And since then, I've been doing that for guests. I love doing that because it's such a good spiel. Think about that.
It's true. I like brandy dipped cigars.
Really?
They're so good. Yeah, my lips tingle. Like it's like, I don't know. It's almost like there's a toxin or something. in it.
Yummer. Yeah.
And I just love it. I love the taste of a good cigar.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, we're missing some of the conversation in the chat. What's going on?
Yeah, they are wild, man.
Everything from toilet paper to joints. Yeah.
The
A lot of things
bartender
going
was
on in there.
effing with him.
Oh,
Had a Cuban do that in Miami to mess with customers.
that could lead to a very bad combination. That thing.
Yeah, that's just
Love it.
look.
The
The fact
TP.
is, liquor dipped cigars is a real thing. It's not fucking with people. Jesus Christ, it's been around for a while. It wasn't created because somebody was wanting to fuck with somebody, Bush.
Do you
Brandy?
guys know who Jim Mars was?
Jim Mars. No. Who was it?
Das Wolfen, do you know who he was?
The name's ringing a bell, but I can't think of it.
Okay. Mars was out of Texas, was a Texas journalist. Jim Mars
I know who he is
was,
now.
was one of the first guys to come out with a book back in, I guess it was the 80s. I've got a copy of it here about the JFK assassination. Later, he was one of the most up to speed journalists around on the remote viewing program. So anyway, Mars wrote a book, and he used actually a lot of my research that I did on lunar phenomena, the moon, when I was doing a lot of shit on the moon. We ran a number of his articles in UFO magazine. So anyway, to get back to my story, Jim was a friend of mine, was a friend of the magazine, and one issue, we were just coming out with a new issue that had some of his stuff in it. And we had gone over to Vegas to meet him. He was up from Texas. So Vicky was out playing the slots. Him and I met in a bar. And we were having a drink and we were talking. He was a funny, funny guy. And anyway, we're sitting there. And I said, damn, Jim, you know what? I'd love a cigar. He said, oh, hell yeah, I'd love a cigar too. So one of the gals came over, and of course they have cigars there. And we asked to bring over some cigars, and he and I both ended up getting one of these Mexican monstrosities they had there. This damn thing had to be 1.5 feet long, this cigar. So we fired him up, and we're sitting there feeling good. We're smoking our cigar, and we were talking about the Alamo. Now, the Alamo has always been one of my hot topics when it comes to Texas, okay, the Texas Revolution. Well, it turns out Jim had been in a reenactment outfit, and he was a reenactor of a Mexican artillery outfit. Okay, they would dress up in the Mexican uniforms. They actually had artillery pieces. They would do these reenactments fighting the Texas rebels and all this kind of bullshit. And I don't remember anymore if it was Mars or me that suggested we ought to switch to tequila. Well, we got a girl over and we ordered a tequila and shots, and he's there talking about this. Suddenly he goes, "Fuego," which is fire, and boom, down the hatch. Well, hell, we couldn't just stop at one. I mean, it was tequila, for God's sake. So about 15 shots later, we're falling out of the damn chair, and we're still smoking those Mexican cigars. Vicky got back, took a look, and just shook her head and walked off. I'll never forget that night. He was a character, my God. But fuego, when I hear fuego, I think about Jim Mars, that shot of tequila, and that Mexican cigar. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I remember where I knew him from now. He's a 9/11 truther.
Yeah.
A what?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, did he change his tune?
No, he died.
I know he's dead. I know
No,
he's dead, but
No, he, look, he and I went round and round about that crap. And,
I still
you
don't.
know,
Yeah. So what is it? A truther? What truther?
9/11.
Oh, 9/11 truther.
Truther.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Don. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, that's fine. But anyway, we would go round and round on that kind of stuff. He had, I thought, some pretty crazy ideas about that. For example, I would ask him, I said, well, Jesus, Jim, if this was all a put up deal, I saw the damn videos of the planes hitting the Twin Towers, and what in the hell hit the Pentagon? And he would go round and round on that, but no, when it came to a party, he was quite a character.
Yeah, I have a bunch of respect for 9/11 truthers as Gary has for moon landing truthers.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite
Of respect.
The opposite of respect. Yeah. My brother loves
I'm
to
the same
troll
way.
people with the moon landing one. He loves to troll people with that stuff.
Moon landing, flat earthers, and 9/11 truthers all fucking irritate me when you start talking.
Yeah, I like my
But
joke
that's
about.
what's wonderful about America.
Yep.
That's
We
right.
are all, up to this point, entitled to our
It
own
looked
personal
like-
That's
truth.
right.
It looked
Even
like
if
a
your
controlled
opinion's stupid.
demolition. It's like, have you ever seen a controlled demolition? It
Right?
looks nothing like that.
No.
Well, my big argument that they really can't refute is like, do you know how long it takes to create a controlled demolition?
It's a lot of work.
It takes weeks. Somebody would have noticed something.
Somebody would have noticed them running wire, no doubt. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I was so glad when Joe Rogan stopped that shit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That other asshole, he's supposedly a great conservative talk show host.
Alex Jones.
Yeah, I fucking can't stand that guy. I can't stand him and his 9/11 truther crap.
He cracks me up. I consider him entertainment, not hard news.
Yeah. Well, the other argument is like, jet fuel doesn't melt steel. It doesn't have to melt it. It just has
to weaken it.
Yep. And that's exactly what it did.
It started bowing. Oh, Boeing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that wasn't an intentional joke. It's just like,
Right.
oh, Boeing.
That was pretty plain, Gary.
What's wrong with your Jägermeister? Nobody likes Jägermeister. It's like,
I fucking love it.
You're out of your mind. Do you like NyQuil?
nobody
too?
likes
Do you drink
Jägermeister.
NyQuil to get high? I mean,
Jägermeister is like,
oh,
it's like I've always made fun of it as like a mouthful of anus, because it's anus is where it gets its flavor.
well, I was a bartender for years, and they used to order Jaeger bombs, which is that
I've
with
had 'em.
orange juice, and it's like, ugh, what in the hell?
No, the ones
man?
I had was a shot of something. I can't remember what it is in Jägermeister.
The mix is different, but it's always a shot of Jägermeister and some kind of juice.
You have a super chat.
Some guys used to drink Jägermeister with Red Bull when that stuff come out. I was like, God, you guys are
It's just
gross. What are
nasty.
you doing?
No,
It's like-
I drink
it's like-
that shit alone.
I want to chug down
At
some
room
black
10.
licorice.
Yeah.
Liquefied black licorice, and I want to
Why
drink
don't you
it.
just drink Galliano, man? It's not the same thing.
Slivovitz, boys.
Slivovitz.
You might as well. You might as well drink raw
Genuine from
sewage.
East Europe, Slivovitz.
Raw sewage. Love raw sewage. Kingsport Cow, check this. My town has a 2% black population, mainly me. The mayor has declared an annual Juneteenth celebration to start next year. For who?
For you, Kings.
These are I got to tell you, there's nothing more annoying than leftist fucking white people that feel that they got to do everything for black people. It's like, if they don't have us doing this for them, they'd have nothing. It's that whole savior mindset that they have.
Yeah.
You know, it's Christ. And they talk shit about conservative white people. It's like, dude, we can be assholes. I know that, but give it a fucking break. We're not trying to act like the saviors to the fucking world. And that's all they think they are. Karen, every Karen you meet thinks they're a savior of something or someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous. So $5. Thanks for that, man. You didn't have to do that, but awesome sauce. Thank you so much for being a big supporter. We love you, Cal. Let's see. Kitty Bear. I like drinking elderberry gin with orange juice or energy drinks. I can get drunk on that. I don't know. I feel like there's something wrong with me. I would like shotgun beers, and I was having a blast. I just give me a fucking beer, some whiskey.
Beer bongs are cool. If you know what that
I
is.
had to
I'm allergic to hops.
I had to undergo the kamikaze initiation
Woo!
when I hit Okinawa.
Woohoo!
You know
Wait.
what a kamikaze was?
Yes, but you
Glass
are
of beer with a shot of sake in the
Oof.
bottom. And then you had to down the whole concoction. But you couldn't stop at one. You had to have a minimum of 3 or more.
Oh,
and
well,
let me tell you
that's-
what, that would light your life up.
I couldn't do that today. There's no way. There is no way. I would pass out.
I'll stick
quickly.
to single malt when I can drink again.
I mean, that sounds like your Boilermaker, or one that I used to get people in trouble with all the time was a flaming Dr. Pepper, man. That thing, it's a shot of amaretto, and you put just enough of like 151 Bacardi rum on top of it so you can light it. Something that'll light. You just float it on top. And half a glass of beer in a mug, right? You drop it in there, and you chug it down. It tastes just like Dr. Pepper. It's ridiculous. People used to get in so much trouble on those things, man. Oof. Because they're tasty. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's what that sounds like. I would go blind from that.
Speaking of going blind, it was fun. I love moonshine, real moonshine.
Oh,
But
God.
I'm always careful when I drink it. I need to know who made it and if I trust them.
Yeah.
Because you can go blind on that shit.
Hell yeah,
And-
you can.
And here in Missouri, like in the Ozarks, they had this one brand you can get, and it's a reliable source. And my buddy got a bottle of it, and and you could hold up I swear to God, hold up the glass, and just the spirits in that thing were crazy. I'd never seen so many spirits in something. And we downed like 3 or 4 shots of that before we went out. We hadn't even gone out yet. We were going to go out. And
Who's driving?
Marshall was the driver. He was designated because he only had 2 shots. And Marshall Devaney. And we're walking out to the car, and the guys are just fucking around, taking forever to get in the car. And I watched this one dude. I'd never met him before this night. I'd never met him. And he was drinking before we got there. It was his house that we went to. And he walks around to the back of the car, and it looks like he's getting ready to take a piss. Whips his dick out, and he starts peeing. I went, oh. So I went around the side of the car, the other side, driver's side. And as he's standing there, and he's aiming out away from passenger side of the car. And then suddenly he looks over. I saw him. I'm watching his fucking eyes. and he's eyeing my buddy Ryan and Marshall. And I'm still friends with both these fuckers. And Ryan's talking to Marshall, not paying attention. And all of a sudden, he turns and he's got his fingers pinched on the end of his pecker like that. And I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? And he stretches it out. And he gets this look like he's fucking aiming. And I'm looking at him, and I'm going to tell you again, this guy already had some moonshine in him when we got there. So he's aiming, then all of a sudden he goes, boop, like that. Boop. And this one laser blaster Star Wars sized beam of piss shot from the end of his dick over the top of the back of that car and smacks Ryan in the side of the fucking head. I swear to God, I thought this was going to be.
That was cause for an ass whipping.
No, it was. It totally was, because he went after him, and Marshall and I are stopping him, and we're like, "You're just going to kill this guy, Ryan."
I don't know what's scarier, the fact that he could pull that off, or the fact that he practiced to get that good at that.
Yeah, this is something he's done before. It was obvious he has some experience with this shit. It was a perfect fucking blast of urine through the air right into the side of my buddy's head. I'm like, and I'm like, thank God that wasn't me. I would have killed this guy.
Well, that's what you get when you pregame with moonshine.
Hey, look, Bush, when somebody does that, I dare you not to fucking look at it. Fucker. You turn around and I'm looking at his eyes first, and then I see what he's doing, and I'm like, what the fuck? And then he does it. He blasts him on the side of the fucking head. And it's amazing. An hour later, Ryan didn't even remember it. We were all so hammered.
Well, hell no. You're hammered on moonshine by that time.
And we were at a big old country bar where they did a lot of line dancing.
Now it's a good time. Now it's a good time to play that advisory about this is a veteran show.
Anytime you have a penis story, that should always be used.
Well, my goodness, they whipped out the penis story pretty quickly.
Warning. The following program involves discussions between military veterans. As such, it is almost guaranteed that there will be coarse language and crude subject matter. So if the words piss, fuck, cock, cunt, and shit offend you, or if openly discussing that one time you were butt-fucking your ex-girlfriend and her miniature pincher jumped up on the bed and started licking your asshole until you had the best orgasm of your life makes you uncomfortable, this might not be the place for you. Otherwise, enjoy.
Good old Matt. All right, here. This is how you drink. I love this. I don't know if you guys ever watched Super Troopers. It is absolutely one of my favorite cop movies ever made. And this is so fucking funny the way he downs these shots.
When do I get to do that? You get your chance, Rope. Shots? That's a lot of. Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm impressed.
Wow! Jesus.
I love that fucking movie. I got Anima to watch it. I don't think she liked it. It's guy humor. What did he say? About to go to break here. What did he say?
Yeah.
Rolling on the floor, laughing. I had a classmate who was going to get a ticket for peeing in the wild. He told the cop, I am not wild peeing, but I am not, and sprayed the cop. I laughed myself sick as he went off to the station. Yeah, I bet he got arrested. Fucking piss on a cop. Just asking for trouble. But anyway, let's see. We got a couple minutes here. Anything else you want to talk about before we get into the break and then come back to talk about the actual bicentennial?
Right.
Chanel says break now.
Break now? All right. Let's take our little mini break and we'll be right back. Hi, guys. This is Gary from Pop Culture Minefield here on KGRA, and we're leaving for our first break. I hope we survive.
Did you know 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated? If you struggle with focus, run low on energy, or when it's time to finally sleep, you simply can't, this can all be linked to dehydration, and Fuel Up has the answer. Our proprietary formula contains the finest cellular hydration with the strongest immune-enhancing natural ingredients. The Fuel Up system is made up of 3 different incredibly tasting varieties. Wake kickstarts your day with a jolt of caffeine. Play boosts focus while hydrating your cells. Rest not only helps you relax, but also rejuvenates your cells while you sleep. Here's what our clients have to say.
I really don't miss my coffee, and you can tell the difference.
So I'm going to take it for the energy. I'm going to take it for the play. I'm going to take it, all day.
And it works. That's the thing. It works. We love it.
Take the Fuel Up Challenge now, where we offer a Feel the Difference money-back guarantee. Fuel Up for life.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Oh wow, we survived! Welcome back to the commercial break. Now for some more Pop Culture Minefield on KGRA.
Yeah, I don't know. The guy that does that intro, outro there for the commercial break, he should be taken to Newfoundland and treated like a white seal.
No.
Those Newfoundland people, boy, they're really good with seals. I see Joe had to leave, so we'll see you later, buddy. Let's get into some of this stuff, Don, because I did my little post yesterday about the Declaration of Independence was our Dear John letter to King George, and the Constitution a few years later was the formal divorce. And it's funny, but it is true. It's really kind of what it is. It's a great way of giving a kid an example of what that is.
Well, you really gotta have some backstory to understand the whole revolution thing. Now, the backstory goes back to the early to mid 1750s. Now, at that time, we, of course, were a British, basically series of colonies, all right? There was Massachusetts, there was New York, there was Pennsylvania, there was Virginia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Delaware, South Carolina, and they were all basically their own little fiefdoms under the British Crown. Now, there was a guy in Virginia who basically had a dream, and that dream was being commissioned into the British Army, receiving a commission. As it was, this guy was a militia colonel, but he wanted to be a British officer, and his name was George Washington. Washington wanted to be a British officer. That was his dream. Now, the governor of Virginia sent him on a mission. Basically, Washington was, among his other pursuits, a surveyor. But there was another group in North America that wanted what the British had, and that was France. France had a very strong presence in what is today Canada. And I guess back in those days, it was still Canada. But the British and the French had been enemies for centuries. As a matter of fact, they both delighted in every opportunity they could have to slaughter each other, okay? Now, in Europe, that was one thing. They would line up their troops, they would march at each other. They were all using smoothbore muskets, flintlocks, and then they would just bang away at each other. However, here in the New World, things were a little different. Now, the French did something that the British were in many ways too arrogant to do. The French made allies with their local Indians up there, but they went beyond that. They lived with the Indians. They married within the tribes. They really became basically French and Indian. And they were out to try to wrest control of North America from the Brits. Well, in what today is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on the Monongahela River, there was a fort that was being built there. And one of the things that Washington was tasked to do was to go up to this fort, make sure the French weren't around there, and secure it for the crown. Well, when they got up there, they ran into some Frenchmen. One thing led to another. Shots were fired, and Washington was credited with killing a French diplomat. Now, that had far-ranging consequences. Ergo, we got what we here in the United States call the French and Indian War. They called it something else in Europe. I believe it was King John's War. But regardless, this literally had worldwide consequences. The war started, and buddy, it was brutal beyond brutality. For one thing, the French and the Indians fought guerrilla war. Okay.
Well, this is also where scalping got started.
Yes. Well, taking a scalp was one way of basically earning money that you killed the enemy.
You had to prove it was a white man's
it was a
scalp.
trophy.
Yep.
It was a trophy. So the French and Indians began raiding the frontier, and they massacred the colonists there. Men, women, little children. Where I'm from, there was actually a big battle where these French Indians came through. Okay, maybe 3 or 4 miles behind my parents' home was part of the Cantaning Warpath. Now, you look that up in your on the internet. That was basically a trail that you could take from New York all the way down to the Carolinas. Okay. Originally, I guess thousands of years ago, it was a game trail. The Indians then basically turned it into a superhighway. And this was where a lot of these French and Indian allied people would come down to raid the British. Now, after the war, which went on for quite a while, was over, and incidentally, the British often got their ass kicked because they wanted to fight the way they fought in Europe. But basically over here, the French said, nah, we don't think we're going to line up so you can shoot us. It's more fun if we hide behind a tree or a rock and you've got that nice shiny red coat on. And when you come marching down, we'll just shoot your ass off. And they did, until one of the British officers got the idea, well, we ought to emanate these guys. His name was Rogers, and they made a unit that became known as Rogers Rangers. And today, the Airborne Rangers of the United States Army trace their lineage all the way back to this guy. And their motto was, you get your musket or your rifle, you get enough powder for at least 100 shots, get enough shot for 100 or so, you bring your tomahawk and your knife, and we're going to go out and we're going to massacre these guys. And that's exactly what it did. Now, this war, by the time it was over, had some terrible consequences. Number one, the French were bankrupt, okay, for all intents and purposes. And later, this would lead to the French Revolution. The Brits were feeling the strain, okay? And then things took a bad turn right here in the American colonies. Basically, the Brits thought, well, we fought this war for your benefit, so now you're going to pay for the war with your taxes. And they started taxing the colonists with basically no representation for the colonists in Parliament. That's where the famous phrase, no taxation without representation, began. The Americans had no say in it, and they got pissed about that.
Almost
now,
like
in
today.
hindsight, in hindsight, for example, the tax on tea. Now, back in those days, tea was the coffee of everybody. Everybody drank tea. But the British would send their tea over here, which most of it they were getting from their colonies in India. They would tax it, put tax stamps on it, and if you bought the tea, you paid the tax. Well, a little something happened up in Boston that today we call the Tea Party, and a bunch of American sons, they called themselves the Sons of Liberty, decided they were going to show these arrogant British sons of bitches what was what. So one night, they all dressed up and painted themselves up to look like Indians. They invaded the ships at anchor in the harbor and threw all that freaking tea overboard. Well, buddy, did that cause some problems. Here were these ungrateful American wretches basically spitting in the eye of King George, okay? Now, we, the Americans, had been trying to get to the British to listen to us. If they wouldn't have been so goddamn arrogant, we still today might be a British Commonwealth nation. But they said basically, fuck you. You're lucky we're letting you even live to pay taxes. So shut up and go home. Well,
sounds like our government today.
Yes, it does. It does very much. So a little bit of time went on. There was a lot of riots in Boston. Okay. There was some taunting of the British troops, which led to a little something known as the Boston Massacre, where British troops fired on American citizens, killing some. One of them that they killed was a free man, a black man, okay, who's considered quite the patriot these days, and several others. Now, when this happened, oh my God, the uproar was unbelievable. And it traveled all up and down the East Coast. Everybody knew about that. They knew about it in New York, in Pennsylvania, in Virginia, all the way down to practically the border of what today is Florida. People were becoming politically aroused. Well, a little bit of time went on. One of the defense attorneys, okay, was Samuel Adams, who was considered one of the most fiery of all the Boston radicals, and they were radical up there, defending these troops. Now, that sounds counterintuitive, but he had his reasons for doing that, showing them the rule of law still was maintained here in the colonies. Well, things started to get hot. Now, remember, this is a short time after the French and Indian conflict. Not only that, but there were still a lot of restless Native American tribes. The colonists up there in Lexington and Concord began storing arms and munitions. Well, not only that, but they were also thumbing their nose at the Brits, even as all this was happening, including the burning down of a British tax collector's home. And that became too much for the British authorities. So they decided, we are going to go out and we are going to disarm these son of a bitches and take their guns and powder away so nothing else will happen. Well, on April the 19th, 1775, a British light infantry battalion was sent out to go to Lexington and Concord to confiscate the arms and munitions the Patriots were storing there. And it unfortunately led to an incident at Lexington where nobody knows to this day who fired a shot, but somebody fired a shot.
The shot heard around the world.
Yes, the British opened up on the Americans. There were roughly 70 or so Patriots lined up out there with their muskets. The British opened fire on them, killed 8 or 10. Well, buddy, that was the spark. And suddenly, Minutemen, because that's what the militia were called then, the Minutemen, they could be ready in a minute, grab their muskets and their powder and shot and take off, began streaming in from all across the countryside. And these British troops marched all the way up to Concord, and they were taken under fire the whole way. I mean, it was bad. They ended up having to turn around. They couldn't find any of the munitions that had been stored there. I guess the colonists moved them away. And they turned around and headed back to Boston under fire the whole time. And that basically was the first shots of the American Revolution. That basically was because of an attempted, listen to me very carefully, an attempted government gun grab. Does that sound familiar to anybody today?
Yep. Yeah, the British had a case of
well,
FAFO.
Joe Biden's old enough to have been there. We should ask him.
Yeah.
And anybody that tries it's going to have another case of FAFO.
Well, when you really sit down, you examine the history, you examine the basic reasons all this happened. All I can tell you from my standpoint is it was a miracle that this happened, that this survived, these guys survived, because in essence, in 1775, 1776, the British Army was considered one of the premier military forces in the entire planet. They had the Royal Navy, which was huge and massive. They had their infantry, which was highly trained, highly drilled, and these guys were nobody to fool with. And they had basically no respect, none, for the American citizen soldier. They saw them mostly as country bumpkins and farmers. But they began to learn a lesson. And one of those lessons began with people like Mad Anthony Wayne and his Green Mountain Boys. Those guys had switched from muskets to rifles. Now, if you're not real familiar with firearms, basically the muzzle loading musket which the British carried, the Brown Bess, was a smoothbore weapon. In other words, no rifling in the barrel whatsoever. And it was only good aimed fire. You'd be lucky to hit a target at 50 yards. Now, 50 yards is not much. Hell, I can shoot down targets at 50 yards with my pistol. But back in those days, the ball, when it was fired, would have a tendency to veer off. That's why they would line up in big, great lines and all fire at once with the hopes of hitting something at the other end of that target. Well, with a rifle, they were basically an innovation that is credited originally coming from the Germans. Okay. The Germans, their huntsmen, discovered that with a rifle, they could vastly increase the range and take down game. Well, a deer at 150 yards is really not a hell of a lot different than shooting at an enemy soldier at 150 yards. And they could make shots out to 200 yards and beyond. The problem with the rifle, as opposed to the musket, most of them you could not stick a bayonet on. And with a trained British soldier, they could get perhaps 3 shots off within a minute. But with a rifleman, it would take them a good 30 seconds or more to pound that ball down the tube. So, you had your pluses and your negatives. But, buddy, that started it. And pretty soon, the British discovered that those damned Americans, you know what they're doing? They're shooting down all our officers and our NCOs right at the start of an engagement, and that's not fair. That's not how we do it in Europe. Well, that was the fucking idea, okay? I mean, that was the idea.
You got to be in it to win it.
Gaspard Kolnar was the German that created rifling in 1498.
Well, thank you, Gaspar. Thank you. But that was the beginning. Now, surprisingly, George Washington had it in his little bonnet that he wanted to lead these American forces. And the Continental Congress, originally, they would just get together to try to decide what the hell are we going to do, okay? Suddenly, we've got this war on our hands, but we're at a disadvantage. We don't have any money, okay? There was no money, okay? We, the Americans, were desperately short of things like gunpowder and lead and artillery, cannons. We didn't have it. So what did we do? Well, in many regards, we ended up stealing it originally from the Brits, okay? Now, in the interim, what did we do? We got pragmatic. Well, granted, we pretty much hate the French for what the French did, 20 years before. But, hey, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So we started sending representatives to France, to the court of the French king. And ultimately, they helped us. They sent us money. They sent us weapons. They sent us uniforms, and eventually they promised to send us 10,000 or more of their soldiers, which, I might add, when it was all said and done, ended up biting the French big time in the ass, because their entire nation ended up collapsing, and a Corsican artillery officer ended up becoming the first person of France and then the emperor, a guy by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte, who turned the entire European continent into a slaughterhouse. Okay? If you're not familiar with what happened with the French and what they did to Europe, Napoleon had, well, what they call today a Napoleon complex. He was going to overrun the whole goddamn thing and put it all beneath the glory of France. And it ended up being genuinely a world war that involved anybody and everybody. It involved the Brits, the French, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Germans, okay,
The
the Russians, the Belgians. It was just from top to bottom. And hey,
well,
there it was.
Napoleon might have done it if he hadn't gone after Russia in winter.
That was his bridge too far.
Yep.
I got to be honest, he probably would have succeeded with them if they hadn't fucked up with getting lead in their canned food.
Yeah.
Because
that is very, Gary, that's an excellent point.
Because
they had no idea.
They were starving after that. That's all that happened. Once they didn't have food, because we learned through Napoleon, a military travels on its stomach.
Yep.
And so France invented canned food. And it was specifically, again, the military always creates stuff that ends up being handed down to society. That is awesome. Microwave ovens, canned food. Canned food was created for soldiers. But the problem was in the canning process, the French company that was canning the food for them accidentally used lead lining. I think that's what it was. Was that what it was?
Soldering.
Yeah.
Soldering. That was it. Soldering. And it polluted the food and made the food poisonous. And so they couldn't eat the food and they were starving. They were eating the leather from their shoes. If you want to watch a movie that's great, that tells you a little history, The Duelist by Ridley Scott, it's his first movie ever made. In my opinion, one of the best films ever made. And it talks about those events. And it's a beautiful film, well shot, almost no budget, and yet they pulled it off. In fact,
people today don't realize the extent of the death and destruction in Europe that happened as a result of the Napoleonic Wars.
It looked like those paintings of the plague. You've seen those, where Hell on Earth. That's what that period looked like. It was that ugly and gross and brutal. But again, Napoleon would have been successful. I believe it. I wholeheartedly believe it if they hadn't fucked up with the food.
Yep.
Because without it, they starved.
That bridge too far by going into Russia. Nobody had an idea of how vast Imperial Russia was. And even a bit over a century later, Adolf Hitler, when he thought he could go into Russia and take it within a year, the man was mad. And you had the disadvantage of never listening to what his generals were telling him, because Hitler knew better.
He always knew better.
Bit him on the ass.
And it's, by the way, if you've never seen that film about the last days of Hitler, what a powerful film that is. I forget the actor's name, Wim Wimmer, I think his name was. He really nailed it. And that's one of the things that you see in the film is his disdain for his command. Because he would not listen to them. He knew better than all of them. But anyway, the French helped us during the Revolutionary War. After the Revolutionary, at their expense. Then when it came our turn to help them, George Washington says, "Oh, I'm sorry. No, England's our cousin. We can't do that." I'm not saying America has always been a dick, but we're kind of dicks in this country. We really are. We're like, yeah, this is really great what you did for me. Oh, pay you back? I'd rather owe you all my life than cheat you out of it.
Well, then after Jefferson, okay, our third U.S. president, after he took office, Napoleon Bonaparte desperately needed money. And as a result, he offered the sale of the New Orleans territory going all the way up to the northwest, all right, to the basically the Pacific Ocean for a little over $15 million.
Commonly known as the Louisiana Purchase.
Yep.
And that was the deal of a lifetime. It's kind of like when we bought Alaska from Russia. Nobody knew what was up there. They thought it was all nothing but a frozen goddamn iceberg. But, the stuff that was available to us after we get up there and checked it out. But that was one of the great purchases in American history. And we owe it to Jefferson to have done that. Now, there were a lot of naysayers at the time. And this is also a little known fact, but there were some American senior military officers that basically wanted to mutiny and basically grab a big chunk of that land and set up their own fiefdom, okay, their own little empire that fortunately fell through. Aaron Burr, the son of a bitch that killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel.
Yeah, I don't like Burr, but I also don't like Hamilton.
Yeah.
I actually
Well, hey, we had some dicks in our background.
Well, a lot of people, they like to make him out to be this great guy. I said, the fact is, when he chose not to take that shot, I think his arrogance took over. He thought the wrong thing and then got murdered for it. But at the same time, I think he accepted that too, because he knew that if he died, he would destroy Burr. So he allowed himself to be killed, that risk of being killed, just to ruin Burr. And that takes a special kind of fucking asshole to do that. It really does. Because he had to know that was a risk by, when he shot in the ground or in the air. I can't remember.
I think he fired a shot into the air.
But the thing about him, a lot of people don't realize it. Man, this guy was actively going after Burr because of an election. It was one election that cost his dad. So he had a vendetta against him.
They played dirty pool in those days. Hey, look.
I tell people all the time, it's nothing's new.
They would these guys would buy a newspaper, okay, publish their own newspaper, much like today, all right, and they would report lies and defamation and all kinds of smearing their opponents. If you basically looked at some of that, for example, Thomas Jefferson had many of his own political detractors, and they tried to use the fact that he apparently had a relationship with a black woman. I think she was still a slave, officially a slave, but Jefferson's wife had died. I guess he wanted female companionship. He ended up having a number of children with this woman, and his political opponents went to town on him about having this relationship with this black woman. They were very, 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 they were dirty bastards, let me tell you.
Absolutely. There's even I recall reading one headline where one of them called the other a tranny. Like a closeted homosexual transvestite. That was actually in one headline. I'm like, You've seen nothing until you read the headlines from ugly verbal sparring from the late 1700s through the all the way up past even the Civil War. The muckrakers, man, were notorious for those kinds of headlines. Mudslinging was just nasty business with headlines.
Yellow journalism.
And people act like yellow journalism is something that's only new to us today with CNN and all that shit. No, it's always been there. Little do people know that the factions in a little town called Tombstone, one news magazine there in town was pro the Clintons, the other one was pro the Earps. Well, when you go back to look at their politics, the one that was pro the Cowboys was a Democrat-run newspaper, and the other one was conservative that supported the Earps. Imagine that. Yep. Politics playing in the news all the way back then. It's ridiculous, dude. It's ridiculous. So it's nothing new, Don. I swear to God. It's one thing, I know I've not seen as much as you have when it comes to these things, because I'm guarantee you've done 1,000 times more research than me. But I grew up in the house with a professor of history, and I had that stuff beat into me from childhood. And I love history because of it. My dad created a monster when it came to reading about history. And somebody asked me the other day, what kind of books do you read? I'm like, I read history books and biographies. That's all I read. It's hard for me to read fiction. And that's why when I read fiction, because I like your stuff that you write, Don, I will put that on audio and let it go. And I just enjoy it that way. It's like somebody's reading a cool little story to me. But when it comes to my actual reading, when I sit down and when I'm quiet, I like reading, when you're writing about stuff that happened to you, that's the stuff I like to read. I don't know why I'm wired like that. I just love reading history and biographies, personal stories. And one of my favorites, I don't know if you ever read about him, was Peter O'Toole. He wrote this book called Loitering with Intent. What a great fucking title to a book, Loitering with Intent. I fucking love that title. I saw the title of that book and his photo, and I went, I'm buying that. I don't know if that book's going to be any good, but I fucking love that cover. And I love that title. And I read the book, and what it is even though it's biographical, it tells a little bit of himself. Really what it is was his personal hatred of Adolf Hitler. That's really what that book's about. That he felt he was at personal war with Adolf Hitler. An intimate look at how he felt about his hatred with Adolf Hitler. I love that. It's a great book.
Well,
I've never read it. I recommend it.
One thing about that period of time in America, under Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the Democratic Congress, should hang their head in eternal shame. They had an idea what the Nazis were doing to the Jews of Europe and others like the Romanies. And they turned away a ship filled with Jewish refugees.
There's a movie about it
the
too,
United States,
and a book,
and sent them back to Europe. And all those people ended up in the concentration camps.
Yes, they
that
did.
Was
we turned
despicable.
our backs on them.
Just like what Roosevelt did to the Japanese Americans here.
Interring them in those camps. That's right.
Talk about a cessation of your constitutional rights, rounding those people up who they never had one iota, not one, of any of those Japanese people, the Japanese American people, of being a traitor or a saboteur or anything else. They just rounded them up willy-nilly. Now, okay, to an extent, I can somewhat understand the reasoning behind it. But then what happened? Okay, those young American Japanese guys became some of the most highly decorated military soldiers in Europe, the 442nd, okay? I mean, they had more silver stars, purple hearts, you name it, they were a terror on the Germans. And one could easily ask, why didn't they round up German Americans or Italian Americans?
Yep.
Because there was more reason. There was a German Bund in this country that, in fact, were. Goddamn phone.
Yeah,
there were.
You're right. Because there were more Germans and Italians in the United States than there were Japanese.
Yeah.
Period.
My grandfather, if they would have rounded up Germans, my grandfather would have been rounded up as opposed to serving honorably in the war.
Hey, there was a reason, and it had to do with skin color.
Yeah.
That was over 80 years ago. Now, people today will still try to use that fucking excuse, which is pure bullshit, okay? You'll never fucking convince me that we're racist like we were a century ago.
Oh, no,
it just ain't happening.
No.
But back then, prior to us becoming involved in World War II, there was definitely racism going on in this country. And what we did to the black military men that served in this country, it's unconscionable.
And that's the one time I brought up about Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy, my greatest disappointment with him was at San Juan Hill, what he said. Two, when the black troops here in the U.S., they had that base where some of the men had allegations made against them down in the South. And instead of stepping up and defending him, he let him slide. He let him go through it. And I felt that was a great betrayal of some of his own military. And it was a failure on his part as a president. Because if you don't see yourself as the president of every American, then you're not the president of every American.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the problem with presidents today is, you know,
Yeah, Zax, you're right. But Japan did attack Pearl Harbor. But then what happened? 4 days later, Hitler declared war on us.
It was the dumbest thing in the world he could have done. He should have waited
We were already
a while.
chock full of Nazi spies. There were all kinds. Hell, fucking Hollywood was filled with German apologists.
We had German apologists, we
their
had communists.
screenwriting to fit the fucking Nazi ideology.
Yep. And I'm glad you brought up the Romani slaughter because most people forget about that. They ignore it that so many Romani were wiped out by Hitler.
Hitler killed more gypsies than anybody.
Yeah.
He killed homosexuals. He killed the mentally infirm.
Mentally disabled?
It didn't matter whether they're crazy or mentally retarded. He would kill them. It was terrible. But everybody looks at Hitler as being the one who slaughtered the most people. It's like, no. An ally of ours killed far more. Stalin. During World War II. Stalin, that's where he got his inspiration for using the trains from, is Stalin. Stalin used the trains.
I think it was more of an ally of convenience.
Oh, it absolutely was an ally of convenience because, and this is why Patton hated him. He knew what they were. And, but the diplomats, and this is when you see it, when you first see the use of diplomacy over how to win a war. Is World War II.
Let us not forget that Stalin and Adolf Hitler had signed a pact where they basically swore they would not fight each other, that when the Nazis invaded Poland, a very short time later, the communists invaded Poland from the east, and they squeezed Poland out of existence. And until Hitler invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, the Russians were content to sit there fat and happy and let the Nazis bomb the shit out of the British Isles.
Yep.
Winston Churchill, in my opinion, is one of the great, great men of history. That man would not bend his knee. God bless Winston Churchill. And after Churchill helped win the Second World War, what did those grateful Brits do? They voted him the hell out of office.
Yep. If Hitler wouldn't have done that in 41, then there's a chance that we wouldn't have gotten involved, or we wouldn't have been able to kick them basically out of France and everywhere else, even with D-Day, because they would have only had the Western Front to worry about, and could have, used all of their resources on that. Because having the Eastern Front drained a lot of manpower and resources.
I'm personally very, very happy that Hitler had enough hubris that he invaded the Soviet Union.
Yeah. That's that's one of the reasons why we won. Because Russia was like charging on there at the end. Russia was charging on Berlin.
Well, Zax, we had it on both sides. The eastern part of the country was worried about German U-boats, and on the Pacific side of the country, we were concerned about the Japanese invading.
Yeah,
that's why, like the famous Battle of L.A., we weren't worried about aliens. We thought it might be Japanese. And the movie 1941 talks about that at the center of its story, which was based on the Battle of L.A. But no, the other thing about when Churchill lost, part of what he lost was the fact that the country was convinced to go socialist. And that's when they did socialized medicine. When he lost, they moved into socialism. And in the UK, it's a love-hate relationship with their national health system, which is, I told you they did a poll back in 2012, I think it was, where they sent a poll home and they did a poll outside of the medical centers, polling people as they're leaving, seeing their doctor, right? And it was exact opposite reaction. For those who polled from home, they were 60% dissatisfied with the NHS. But then they would poll the people coming out just having seen their doctor, and it was the exact opposite. It was 60% pro, very happy because I got to see my doctor. But when they got to the crux of it, what was the big problem? And this is the problem we have with the VA here in the United States, is the wait time to see a doctor.
Yeah.
That you could be months out before you get to see your doctor. And so that's the problem. And that's what Churchill was forced out over. National Health Services. And now we see that, I'm not going to say his name, but that care plan that was brought in a few years ago that didn't work. We see the failure of that, and yet we see them still wanting to do it, and they keep like stepping forward with a whole new plan. It'll be different this time, guys. Socialism doesn't work. The only way socialism can function at all is in small programs. And those programs have to be funded. So you have to have a thriving economy. And what kind of economy thrives? A capitalist economy. Yep. No other economy thrives.
Even though you'll hear them scream, but socialism's never really been tried.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, but that's their argument, is they say it's never been tried. Same thing with communism.
They're ignorant. Okay? And a big part of that is how our American educational system has been co-opted, I'm going to say it, by the Marxist and the socialist. Civics, history, many other things today are no longer taught, okay? No longer taught. American history, George Washington, stuff that we talked about today. You'd never hear that anywhere today in the American or very little of it. Maybe they'll brush on it in college history courses, maybe, but not in any great depth, because we've got climate change and we've got women's rights and we have all these other things, the Rainbow Coalition, which means less than a fart in a windstorm when it comes to running this goddamn country.
Yeah,
Okay,
they basically
and the things that matter.
They basically spend a minute on the American Revolution, but yet spend weeks on slavery. Even though
God damn it, we fought a civil war in large part to free those people in bondage. I had 3 uncles, great uncles, that served in the Union forces during the Civil War. A couple of them got killed fighting those Confederates. And those Confederates were what? Dare I say it? You bet your ass. They were fucking Democrats.
Yep.
Dixiecrats. But there you have it. The Revolutionary War was a civil war. The Civil War was a Revolutionary War.
And none of it was actually very civil.
Yeah, none of it was friendly. But James G is here. Voltaic Blood and Small Time Republic is here. They tried it in Seattle during the Summer of Love. It did not go well. Of course, Ariel Ballette is here. Greetings. Let's see. Anybody else jump in? That was
yeah.
I want to make sure
Small Time Republic.
Small Time Republic. Didn't I say that though already?
Yeah, you did. You were replying to him.
Yeah, Martin doesn't listen to me. He doesn't listen to me when I'm talking. And of course, Kitty Bear. But we did say hi to Kitty Bear.
What did you say, Edric?
Andy Morrow. I didn't catch that. Andy is here. Andy is one of our very good Limey friends. And he's one of us. But we are coming up on the last minutes here of the show, and I think we should wind down. I wish we should all drink wine in the last 10 minutes of the show. Just chilling out, smoke a cigar. But I love when the mayor said that line, and then when they started to walk towards her house, it was time to. Oh yeah. Once they start getting targeted, the politicians, then they get upset and nervous. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Fucking assholes. I get the idea for universal health care. The problem is nobody ever considers how you pay for it. They'll pay for it. Who's they? 1% of this country pays all the taxes.
Yeah.
And it's the 1% that they keep going after and attacking and vilifying. That 1% is who they vilify in this country. And they will dry out that because they don't want to do crop rotation. And that's how you do it. If you want to thrive as a farmer, you have to learn crop rotation. Politicians don't give a shit about that. They are locusts, specifically Democrats. Liberals are locusts when it comes to political thinking in Washington. I'm not talking about the people. Democratic people. Democrats as people. Some of my best friends are Democrats, good people. But politicians, some of the worst I've seen are Democrats. But there are some shitheels on the right side too. Rhinos is what we call them. But what they are conservative for convenience sake. When they're capitalists. Being a capitalist doesn't make you a conservative. A good conservative should be capitalistic, but a capitalist doesn't make you conservative. And you see a lot of those shitheels in office. Hey, Monkey Jeebus is here now.
Yeah.
Good to see you, man.
And so is Zach's tube.
Who?
Monkey Jeebus.
Did he bring his bong?
I doubt it. He left it at home.
I thought that bong was surgically attached to his hand.
It probably is. I bet you $20 his smell is screwed up, that he can't smell anything. Because he's been exposed to that skunky stuff for so long. He can't smell anything. Hey, what do you think of that steak I made? I can't smell it. Kitty Bear heard his name. I was almost asleep. Sorry, buddy. I'll do the same thing. Anima will do this. She'll start to be dozing off, and I'll say her name, and she'll go, huh?
Yeah. Small Time Republic was talking about the Chad in Seattle being an attempt at socialism. It was an attempt at morons trying to play government, because this is the intelligence of these people. Instead of digging up the grass to plant stuff, they brought plastic sheets in and dumped potting soil on top of the plastic sheets, and then planted stuff, thinking they're going to grow their own vegetables that way.
That's just dumb.
Yep.
And I feel bad now, because one of my favorite things my dad would say is it's better to be more on than off.
Yeah.
But not in this case, I guess. Yeah, she's saying I do that at like 4 a.m., say her name, and then she suddenly wakes up. Tim says, like I said, as a safety net for those who can't help themselves, like the handicapped. But what it all has become, I don't like it. And the problem is I won't see my Social Security when the time comes. It's a fear of every retiree that they'll never get their retirement. Because we were told that when I was reached age of retirement, that there would be no Social Security left, but it's still there. It's more of that fear-mongering thing that happens in politics. Everything's always 10 to 20 years out. Always 10 to 20 years out.
Well, we've got the last minute, so.
All right, guys. Don, any last thoughts about the revolution?
We won.
We won. The war, the Revolutionary War got us our liberty. The War of 1812, no matter what, who won? Because I love this. I will show it real quick. This
established us.
Here you go. Has anyone seen Canada? Hold on, I got this. War of 1812. We beat America, kicked their asses, burned their White House. Canadian military is the best. There you go. The fact is, they did kick our ass. They burned, with the help of the British, they burned the White House. But the fact is we walked away from that war. We drove the British out, and we got their respect. We did not get their respect after the Revolutionary War, because they constantly deviled us. That shit stopped.
Got a wrap.
After 1814, it stopped. So
we still skirmished with Canadian fur trappers, American fur trappers, but eventually that stopped.
That all settled itself down, and now we're all good friends. But with that, we end the show. I want to thank our audience on KGRA. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. A lot of education, a lot of fun. And of course, I want to thank John for popping in. Thanks, buddy. And of course, thank you, Joe, for popping in. And I want to thank everybody in the audience, especially in our private chat. I mean, in our group chat, which is Bush McFadden, Adam of Confusa, Zax, Penny, our Muslim uncle, E. Clay Thomason, Kingsport Cal, the Vinkman's girl, Parrot Head, Kitty Bear, and Ariel Ballette, Andy Morrow, Jamie G, and Monk Jibus. Thank you for coming again. Small Time Republic. And I think that's it. Did I get everybody? I think I got everybody. Appreciate everybody watching the show and listening to the show today. Hope you had a good time. Don laid down some education. And Martine, thanks a lot. And Chanel, thank you. And
those sons of bitches. Ma, I'm doing a show.